Han Rui reached the trial courtyard before sunrise. He didn't have to. The slip had named the hour as first bell, and any decent disciple would have arrived at first bell. Han Rui arrived a quarter bell earlier because he'd spent 2 days being late to almost everything, and he wanted to see how a removal roster looked before the men running it noticed he was there. The courtyard was a flat rectangle of black stone, broader than the ration yard, walled on 3 sides by gray cypress, and on the 4th by the long shape of the trial hall. 3 lanterns hung from a beam under the eaves of the hall. The lanterns had been lit, but the flames were low, the kind kept burning for ceremony rather than light. A wooden board hung on the wall near the door. Names had been brushed onto it in black ink. The 6 names from the slip. He stood in front of the board for a minute and looked at them as if he hadn't memorized them already. The ash root sparks pulsed under his bandage. He had 2 now. The first was still the dim Mo Cheng residue, smaller than yesterday but holding. The second was a fresher one he hadn't planned. A junior in the rice line that morning had shoved him hard enough to make his ribs flare, and the ledger had marked it as minor without him asking. Petty, unwitnessed, useful only because the kid would forget about it before Han Rui needed to use it. Sparks of opportunity, the system seemed to be saying. Sparks every day, if he kept getting in people's way. He turned away from the board. 4 disciples sat on the low stone bench along the courtyard wall. He looked at them in the order the slip had named them. A thin boy his own age with a token still bright at the bronze. Sunbow. The thread above his head was almost colorless. A few thin lines of late ration fees, a strand of irritated supervision. He'd failed a promotion test, which was the only reason he was here, and from the way his hands kept moving across his sleeves, he was already certain he was going to fail this one too. A tall man with a slight limp and the kind of haircut a man gives himself with a kitchen knife. Liu Wen. His thread was thicker, ugly green at the base, petty theft, old enough to have grown roots. He sat watching the cypress. A short, broad-shouldered girl with a sharp face. Chao Mei. 2 threads. One reached into the lower mountain, where her family lived, and pulsed like an injury. The other looked outward into nothing. The kind of thread a person carried when they were preparing to leave their name behind. A square man with 2 missing teeth and a face that knew how to hide them. Wang Jing. He had refused a conscription. His thread was simple and old. A public no, given to the wrong officer at the wrong year. He looked the calmest of any of them, which Han Rui took as a bad sign. None of them looked at Han Rui. He sat at the far end of the bench. He didn't introduce himself. They didn't either. The slip had named them and the slip had named him. Anyone who wanted a name had it. Anyone who wanted more than that would have to ask. Nobody asked. For a while there was only wind in the cypress and the dim of the lanterns and the bird that was clearly going to give up on the morning. Then the trial steward came out. He wasn't Shin Chao. He was younger, broader, with the kind of mustache that took the man wearing it more seriously than anyone else did. He carried a sheaf of pale paper strips and a wooden tablet shaped like a roof tile, smaller than a hand. The tablet was old. Its edges had been worn smooth. "On your feet," he said. They stood. Sunbao stood too fast. Cao Mei stood last, like a person who refused to be hurried. "Steward Pan," the steward said, mostly to the courtyard rather than to them. "Trial roster will sign in. I'll call you in the order written. Step to the table. Brush your name on the strip. Place the strip on the tablet. Step back. The table he meant was a low folding desk set up near the door. An inkstone, a brush, a pile of pale paper strips. Sun Bao. Sun Bao stepped to the table, brushed his name, placed the strip on the tablet, and stepped back. The character on the strip glowed faintly. Then it was gone. The strip lay blank on the tablet for one breath. The blank strip drew down into the wood like ink down a wick. The tablet's surface hummed and cooled. Liu Wen. Liu Wen did the same. Brushed name, placed, strip, drank, hum. Chao Mei. She wrote her name in larger characters than necessary. The strip drank. The tablet hummed a little louder. Wang Jing. Wang Jing brushed his name without rolling up his sleeve. He had a stain on his cuff. The strip drank. The hum was almost the same. Steward Pan paused. Mo Cheng. For a moment, no one stood. Han Rui felt him before he saw him. A weight entered the edge of the courtyard, the kind of presence a man developed by being looked at since he was 4. Footsteps crossed the stone, even and steady. Han Rui turned his head. Mo Cheng walked out from beneath the cypress. He was tall. His robe was gray like the others, but cut better and starched at the collar in a way that suggested someone in his household ironed it for him without being asked. A long sword in a black lacquer scabbard rode across his back. His hair was tied with a plain bronze pin. He looked 22 and had the controlled posture of a man who had been allowed to ride at the front of his family's column since he was old enough to keep his back straight. He didn't bow to Steward Pan. He didn't acknowledge the bench. He walked to the table, brushed his name in 2 clean strokes, placed the strip on the tablet, and stepped back. The tablet drank his name. The hum was deeper than the others. Steward Pan let out a small breath the others didn't notice. Han Rui noticed. So did Mo Cheng. Mo Cheng turned where he stood and looked at Han Rui for the first time. His eyes were a dark, level brown. There was no hostility in them, which was worse than hostility. Hostility was an investment. He was looking the way a man looks at a misfiled scroll. Han Rui, Mo Cheng said. Steward Pan started to lift his brush. Han Rui put up 2 fingers. He's talking, Han Rui said. Steward Pan paused. You called witnesses, Mo Cheng said, because you couldn't fight. You took an apology because you couldn't take a punch. You bled on the law hall threshold because you couldn't stand on the front step. You'd rather be small and clever than tall and beaten. Tell me which of those is wrong. Sun Bao made a small noise. Liu Wen smiled at the cypress. Han Rui considered the 4 sentences. The thing about Mo Cheng's voice was that it didn't carry. He aimed his sentences. The right people heard them. Everyone else felt them land somewhere just out of reach. Han Rui had once worked with a quality auditor who used that voice. She'd cost 2 of his co-workers their jobs and kept the survey ratings high. None of it, Han Rui said. Mo Cheng's eyes didn't change. None of it's wrong. That isn't the answer most men give. Most men are arguing for their reputations. Mine has had a hard week. Cao Mei laughed once, sharply. Mo Cheng didn't look at her. You agree with me, Mo Cheng said. I agree with the facts. I disagree with the implied conclusion. Which is? That being beaten correctly is more valuable than being uninjured incorrectly. Mo Cheng paused. It was the smallest pause. Most people wouldn't have caught it. Han Rui caught it because pauses had become his trade. I find your manner repulsive, Mo Cheng said. That's reasonable. Stop agreeing with me. It isn't respect. It isn't meant to be. Mo Cheng's mouth tightened. He hadn't made a face. He had simply chosen not to make a different face. He turned away. Han Rui let his breath out. He hadn't been afraid, exactly. He had been very awake. He glanced sideways. Mo Cheng had stopped beside Wang Jing, who studied his own boots. The cypress dropped a needle and took no side. Han Rui, while he had Mo Cheng's profile to look at and a steward to wait for him, thought, "Assess." Threads gathered on Mo Cheng. A heavy gray cord of clan obligation, double wound, sat on his shoulders. A bright, cold thread of personal pride coiled along his sword arm. A dim thread of disgust pointed at Han Rui specifically. Beneath all of those, a single red thread ran out of the courtyard, climbed the sky over the eastern peaks, and disappeared past a ridgeline Han Rui hadn't seen in this body. The ledger labeled it for him. Life debt. Host, Mo Cheng. Holder, outside Ashen River jurisdiction. Status, active. Settlement at high cost. He read it twice. Settlement at high cost. That was new language. In 4 days of system use, he hadn't seen settlement at high cost. It was the kind of phrase the ledger used when it had been told to be vague. Mo Cheng owed someone a life. The Ashen River sect had put him on a roster designed to kill him. These two facts weren't independent. Han Rui. Steward Pan was looking at him with the patient annoyance of an official who'd rather not say a name twice. Han Rui stepped to the table. The brush was clean. The strip was the same pale color as the others. The tablet sat under it, smooth and gray. He brushed his name. The ink lay flat. The strip turned faintly red at the edges, then settled into pale again, the way the others had. He set the strip on the tablet. The strip didn't drink. For a full breath, nothing happened. The character of his name sat on top of the wood like a painted stone. Steward Pan's brow gathered. Han Rui kept his hand exactly where it was. He didn't lift the strip. He didn't move the tablet. He waited. The tablet finally hummed. Low, not the warm hum it had given the others. A different note. The strip darkened, peeled at the edge, and slid down into the wood as if reluctant. Half of the character, the bottom radical, went last. It clung to the surface a moment longer than the rest. Then it, too, was gone. The hum stopped. Steward Pan exhaled. "That's all," he said, faster than necessary. First trial gate, 4th hour. Wait at the cypress. Han Rui stepped back. He kept his face composed because his face had been composed for 3 days now, and would be composed for as many more as required. He could feel Mo Cheng looking at him. Not glaring, looking. A man who had seen a wrong note. Han Rui returned to the bench. He sat at the far end again. The other disciples hadn't noticed. Sun Bao was practicing breathing exercises that he was certainly going to do incorrectly. Liu Wen was watching the cypress. Cao Mei had pulled out a small whetstone and was sharpening a thin paring knife she had no business carrying. Wang Jing hadn't moved. Han Rui closed his fingers around the ash root spark under his bandage and felt it answer. 2 sparks. 6 disciples. 1 roster. 1 paper that had refused to swallow his name. He didn't know yet what the paper had seen. He suspected he wasn't going to like the answer.